By this rule, Wisconsin's school voucher program and the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation should be abolished. Neither has promised the delivered results. Neither has delivered the promised results. Both have been a waste and an abuse of taxpayer money. And when that condition exists, we should get rid of those programs. We should have the courage to end them. Number 12 on my list is an end to Titanic thinking. For too long, we've been fed this line of bull that the ship is sinking and there's nothing that we can do about it and there aren't enough lifeboats for everybody, so we've got to compete with each other, fight with each other for survival. It is time to usher in a new era of looking out for each other.
Yeah.
We have got to make concern for the common good commonplace again. And that means we start by resisting and reversing the privatization of everything, from our parks to our schools. That's a dozen things I think we need to talk about every day, and we need to work for every day. Instead of dwelling on those things that we're against, these are things that we need to be for. And I would just mention one last thing, a 13th idea. A 13th way to make all of these other ways possible. We need to have a representative democracy.
What a thought.
We need to put a stop to legal bribery. We need to turn auctions for public offices back into elections. We need to end partisan gerrymandering and voter suppression. We need to diversify and democratize the media. We need to restore independence to the courts. We need to turn this back into an authentic, functioning democracy. And so if you are looking for enemies, if you can't resist thinking about who's your enemy, I have a suggestion. The enemy is privilege. The enemy is a few being catered to at the expense of the many. The enemy is privilege. And the answer is a representative democracy. The answer is a concern for common good becoming commonplace again. The answer is not more government. A lot of the ideas that I suggest today would result in billions of dollars in reductions in government spending. And some of the ideas I suggest today would call for billions of dollars in new investment. We don't need more government, we need a repurposed government. We got to stop talking about whether government is too big or too small or just right. We got to talk about whether government is serving the right purpose, whether government is working for the right people, whether government is actually dedicated to advancing the interests of we the people. We don't need more government, we need a repurposed government. And we will not get a repurposed government at a time when both major parties are failing us. I say it in the book, and I've said it everywhere I've gone, we have one party that is scary and another that is scared. And we will not get a repurposed government with those conditions. The scary one is scary because it used to be the party of Abraham Lincoln. It used to be the party of Teddy Roosevelt. It used to be the party of Dwight Eisenhower. It used to be a party dedicated to creating opportunity for all. It is now a party slavishly catering to the rich. It is a party simply devoted to serving the most privileged and wealthy few in our society. And that scary party can become increasingly scary when faced with a feeble opposition.
Yes.
A scared party, one that is not willing to stand up for a dozen things or 24 things that we need to create in our country to not only bring to life and advance the grassroots citizen movement, but to advance our society. We need a party courageous enough to work for these things, not simply against those who seek to demolish everything that we hold dear. A scared party will not get us that repurposed government. And so that's why it is our responsibility, all of us, need to work to create a party capable of getting us that repurposed government. And no, I am not calling for a third party. My goal is not to see 3 parties or 4 or 5. My goal is to see one that is worth a damn. My goal is to see at least one that will aspire to the things that we need to see happen in our society. At least one that will reconnect with us in a meaningful way. At least one that will do the work we need done to make our society the society that we dream about and the society that we wish for. That is our job. Because this change will not come from Washington, D.C. This change will not come from Madison. This change will not come from the political establishment. This kind of change only can come from us. This kind of change is going to be our life's work for the rest of our lives. This change is what we need to take on as our responsibility. Because this change will be the inheritance that we pass on to our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. We were given a marvelous inheritance by past generations, and we've largely squandered that inheritance. It's time for us to take responsibility for that. It's time for us to go to work to make sure that what we pass on to future generations is at least as good as what was given us, and hopefully much, much better. And I hope and I pray that you will join me in that endeavor, because I've decided that I'm not gonna be insane anymore. You know the saying, insanity's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I had a job that I loved, and I did that job for 15 years, but I looked myself in the mirror and I said, if I do that job for another 15 years, if I keep doing exactly what I've been doing, is that going to be game-changing enough? Is that going to get us to a better place? My answer was no. I hope you will also look in the mirror and ask yourself, are the things that you've been doing, is that enough? Or do we need to do some things differently? A lot of us have engaged in behavior that by that definition qualifies as insane. And we've got to come to terms with that, and then we've got to be willing to move in new directions. We've got to be willing to embrace new thinking. We've got to shed old labels and fashion ourselves new identities, and we've got to use those identities and attach them to provocative and aspirational agendas, ambitious agendas. And we've got to fight and work for those agendas every day, and when we do that, we will restore this place to the kind of Wisconsin that we all want it to be. Thank you very much.